Yes, sir. Start.
Yes. Dear doctor, good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to DigiNeuro, a digital initiative by Health and You. Health and You Therapeutics is a joint venture with New Link Company Limited, Japan. Today we are privileged and proud to have Dr. Nandan Yardi as our speaker, a leading pediatric neurologist of the country. I also welcome Dr. Manjusha Patankar, our medical advisor who will coordinate this session. Health and You has a vision to fulfill unmet medical needs. We fulfill unmet medical needs by launching innovative and differentiated products. For example, Amnuride, the first amitriptyline plus mecobalamin combination in the country. Amnuride 5, 10 and 25. So amitriptyline, which was not available at 5 milligram to be given to young adults, we made it available in 5 milligram strength along with mecobalamin. So this becomes a good option in migraine, in young adult migraine and in neuropathy. Then we launched Clobazam in 2.5 milligram strength. Now, as per the recommendation, the Clobazam starting dose in febrile seizures is 0.1 to 0.25 milligram per kg body weight per day. So many times you have to ask the patient to break the tablet and take it. No need, no more. Now, Clobazam is available as Adclobaz 2.5 milligram mouth dissolving tablet. No need to break the tablet in a delicious mango flavor. We also have Adclobaz 5 milligram and 10 milligram, again in mouth dissolving tablet. So in pediatric epilepsy, if you want to up titrate the dose, down titrate the dose, or give the dose in BID dosing, you can use Adclobaz 2.5, 5 and 10. And our innovation and differentiation continues. We are about to launch in few weeks time for child and adolescent migraine, Brentamin, a vitamin therapy for migraine, recommended by American Academy of Neurology. This contains riboflavin 200 milligram, magnesium 200 milligram, and CoQ10 10 milligram. So when your patient is too young to initiate conventional anti-migraine therapy, or you might feel that conventional therapy may affect child's school performance, this could be an option. So Brentamin, 1 tablet BID. And with your suggestion and with your advice, we would like to launch many more innovative products first time in India in the country. Now I hand over the session to Dr. Manjusha Madam to carry it forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everybody. We welcome you to this webinar on an approach to pediatric migraine in office practice. Our eminent speaker today for this webinar is Dr. Nandan Yardi. Dr. Yardi is a senior consultant epileptologist and pediatric neurologist at Pune at BJMC KM Hospital, Sahyadri and Jahangir Hospitals at Pune. He is the president of the Neurological Society of Pune and of the Pune chapter of Indian Epilepsy Association. He has published several papers in national as well as international journals. He has been the ambassador for India at the World Congress of Controversies in Neurology for the year 2017 and 2018. Dr. Yardi, welcome to the session.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you for Health and You and Mr. Deepak Naik for this opportunity to talk to pediatricians on approach to headache in children. And primarily it will be basically based on the pediatrician's office practice, how to approach a child when he walks into your clinic with the mother or the child complaining of headache in this child. And I will therefore restrict to the approach of such a patient, and also the concepts that we follow in how to manage these patients, rather than dwelling more on milligram per kilogram doses and nitty-gritties which are given in the textbook and which you can find elsewhere. So with this, when a child walks in with headache, one has to have a very good history of the headache. That is the most important factor, which will tell you whether this is a significant headache which requires immediate sort of assessment by scan or something more than that, and then treatment accordingly depending on what pathology we find, or is it some kind of a not so sinister headache where you can actually wait and think and decide how to treat it, and you can take your time trying to see the response of the child. So this is the first dichotomy that we have, and this comes really from history. So we have to take a good headache history. How often is the headache? Is it more in the morning or evening? Early morning headaches are more sinister because they might suggest an increased intracranial pressure of a brain tumor or something like that. And continuous headaches throughout the day, intermittent headaches. Is it throbbing? Is it like a band-like headache, or is it unilateral or bilateral? We will see why these are all important. And therefore, one has to characterize the headache in detail. And also, does the headache cause disability? Because a lot of time, young children might have attention seeking, especially just post toddler group between 3 to 5 years, and they will run up to the mother and say, I'm getting a headache. And the next minute they're gone and they're playing, watching TV and all that. So there is no real disability there. It is probably just to seek mother's attention or something like that. So disability, whether it is there or not, how does it affect the quality of life in terms of playing, watching TV, going to school, and so on and so forth. And also other interactions with children, going down to play or not. All these will tell us how it has affected the quality of life. And of course, some of the headaches, like certain migraine headaches, run in families. So family history may be very important. So first dwell on the history. And when we dwell on the history, then we conduct a comprehensive headache examination. Also a very quick neurologic examination to look for any focal deficits or neurologic signs. And is it abnormal or not? So if you find that there is some abnormality in the headache examination in terms of cranial nerves or some other involvement or other neurologic involvement, and then we might order a magnetic resonance imaging right away, and then look for a secondary headache disorder. And if there is a secondary headache disorder, then diagnose the underlying cause and treat the patient for that cause, depending on what the cause is. And if the headache resolves with that treatment, well and good. If the headache does not resolve with the proper treatment of the underlying secondary headache cause, then one has to think whether there was also a primary headache involved, or was it primary headache right from the beginning. And then this lesion that we saw on MRI was incidental, and that has been removed, and the original primary headache, which has not been resolved, has to be looked at from the point of view of primary headache disorder. So if you find that everything is normal, and you don't need to have MRI, there's no neurologic abnormality, then we actually consider a primary headache disorder. And we then, when there's a primary headache disorder, we find out that especially if it is, whether it is frequent, is it recurrent, or is it just one-off kind of headache episode. So treatment for an acute episode may be primary therapy of the headache, or maybe if it is recurrent, a rescue therapy. When there is an aura and the child knows that there is going, she tells the mother, and the mother also knows that he's going to get a headache, some kind of rescue therapy may be used. Of course, when there are recurrent headaches, preventive treatment becomes important. And for all patients with recurrent headaches, biobehavioral treatment also is very important in affecting the headache, reducing the headache, and affecting quality of life. So that is a very basic approach when a child walks into your clinic with headache. Now, what are the, firstly, let us look at what are the imaging indications, brain imaging indications. If there's an abnormal neurological examination, younger than 3 or 4 years, especially with vomiting and with headache, then we must image this child. If there's a chronic progressive headache that has not responded to treatment, we might image this child. If there is unilateral ptosis or third nerve palsy, then one considers ophthalmoplegic migraine, and one must then also do an MRI to rule out neurologic abnormalities. So there are like 12 red flags for considering neuroimaging. Presentation under 3 years, early morning pattern or early morning waking with headache, nausea, vomiting, worsening headaches while straining or Valsalva maneuver, as you can see over here. So changes in presentation, increase of frequency, severity worse by Valsalva maneuver, worse or different from usual. If a child has a usual headache and suddenly starts getting a different kind of headache, or sudden worsening of usual headache, that is the where this is a red flag. If there's a thunderclap headache or a progressing headache, so thunderclap headache means a very, very sudden severe headache, which can mean that there might be a bursting of an aneurysm or something like that. Atypical or prolonged aura. If the aura lasts several hours, then we might wonder whether this is really some kind of a migraine headache, or it is a red flag. So it might be a red flag. Associated systemic illness in a child and headaches, of course, this is a red flag. And when there's an abnormal neurological examination. So there are a lot of these 10 or 12 and occipital pain should always be considered as an abnormal finding in children. And we will see why that is so. So if we are considering with these red flags, if you're considering second headache disorder, diagnose the underlying cause and treat it. You can have space, often you have some kind of lesions like space occupying lesions which increase in intracranial pressure, worse in the morning, improve in the day as the day progresses, aggravated by sneezing, coughing, straining, or Valsalva maneuvers, worsening headaches. You can have inflammation with signs of inflammation like fever, neck stiffness, seizures, altered sensorium. And you can have structural defects like abnormal neurologic examination and or seizures. So acute headaches, chronic progressive headaches, and changing headaches are the presentations of these secondary headaches and should be treated as such, finding out the underlying cause of the headache in these patients. So you might, I'll not go into details, but you might find lesions like this, some tumors in the brain affecting several areas. And then these can very typically give rise to raised intracranial pressure. Once in a while, neurocysticercosis can give rise to severe headaches. Sometimes there may be seizures along with that, as you see in this patient. So having looked at secondary headaches, if there is no abnormal neurologic examination, one thinks of primary headache disorder. And the primary headache disorder, the commonest one is the migraine headaches. And the migraine headaches can be of two types. Common migraine, the ones that do not have aura, and this is very common in children. And in general, school children, about 50 to 60% of children in their lifetime at some time or the other will complain of headache of some sort, maybe an occasional headache, maybe sometimes recurrent headache or persistent headache, whereas it's only 7% of children that have migraines. So diagnosis of migraine cannot be put on any child who complains of headache. There are specific criteria and we'll look at those criteria. But broadly speaking, there are mainly three types of migraine. The common migraine that comes without aura, the classical migraine of the adults where there's a definite aura, usually a visual aura, like hazy lines, difficulty in vision, colored bands or colored patterns, and then or broken images. And then after that, you find that the headache comes on. The third, and then of course, along with that is nausea, vomiting, headache lasting several hours to days, relief with sleep or with some medication which is taken. And then there are the third variety, which is the migraine variants with present with transient neurologic symptoms. So whenever there's migraine-like headache with transient neurologic symptoms, like some tingling head numbness in one limb or vertigo, or some kind of a paralysis of one of the cranial nerves for a short period, or some other features. Those are the migraine variants. So common migraine without aura, classical migraine with aura, and migraine variants are the three types of migraine headaches that we might find in our practice. So chronic non-progressive headaches is could have greater frequency and persistence for years, is also an entity which we must understand. There is no associated neurologic symptoms or signs, no change in headache severity, and it remains persistent. And these usually have emotional or behavioral components. So what are the migraine diagnostic criteria? Diagnosis of migraine without aura requires at least 5 attacks fulfilling the down below criteria, which are headache attacks lasting 2 to 72 hours when untreated or unsuccessfully treated. And this compares in adults of at least 4 hours duration up to 72 hours. So children with 2 hours of headache is also significant to call it one of the criteria for headache, migraine headache. Headache having at least 2 of the following characteristics, like unilateral location, maybe bilateral or frontotemporal, pulsating quality, moderate or severe pain intensity, aggravation by or causing avoidance of routine physical activity like walking, climbing stairs and all that. The next criteria is during the headache, at least one of the following should be there: nausea or vomiting, photophobia and phonophobia, which may be inferred from the behavior of the child or by direct questioning if the child can tell you this. And of course, that this kind of headache should not be attributable to another known disorder, either by proving that the MRI is normal or that there is no other associated systemic illness in the child. So these are the diagnostic criteria. So they're fairly strict, and unless they fit in here, we cannot call every child with migraine and start treating with anti-migraine treatment. Often, many of the kids do not have migraine. As I said, out of some 50-60% of children who present with headaches at different times, only 7% have migraine, and of these, migraine without aura are common, and so you have to fit in these criteria, and only if it fits in, then you call it migraine without aura. The ICHD classification, the International Classification of Headaches 3 that is now out, notes that migraine headaches in children and adolescents under the age of 18 years is more often bilateral than is the case of adults. Unilateral pain usually emerges from late adolescence or early adulthood. This is a fact that we must understand. And if you have unilateral pain, then you might think of it as a red flag. Migraine headache is usually frontotemporal in children, and occipital headache, as we said, in children is rare and calls for diagnostic caution and often might indicate underlying space-occupying lesions. So, when any child coming with occipital headache, one has to do imaging. Very simply, you can think of the international classification is very huge if you go on, and it's mainly meant for headache experts. But as pediatricians, we must probably just remember this word called pound. So whenever a child presents with pulsatile headache, 1 day duration, at least 4 to 72 hours, unilateral location, nausea or vomiting, and disabling intensity. So when this pound is present, one can think of migraine. The migraine variants are hemiplegic migraine, which is unusual but seen once in a while, more common in children than adults. Young adults might present with hemiplegic migraine at times. Abrupt onset of hemiparesis, usually followed by headache, which lasts a few hours, usually recovering within 24 hours. Hemianesthesia may also precede a headache. So this is hemiplegic migraine. And basilar artery migraines are more common in girls. They are associated with basilar artery symptoms like dizziness, weakness, ataxia, severe occipital headaches with vomiting usually. Then you might have ophthalmoplegic migraine, which can occur in children and adults, associated with orbital or periorbital pain, as well as third, fourth, or sixth cranial nerve involvement. The headache resolves in hours, but the ophthalmoplegia may last for days and needs evaluation. So childhood headaches are migraines, short duration headaches. Occipital needs careful evaluation, usually bifrontal or temporal. Cluster headaches are uncommon in children as in adults. And Sunk syndrome is also uncommon. It's a syndrome in which you get inflammation of the eyes. There's a lot of conjunctival ingestion. Also, there is edema of the conjunctiva, and there is usually a frontal headache, which is very severe and responds to indomethacin. Then looking at migraine without aura, at least 5 attacks fulfilling the following criteria are there. Duration between 1 to 48 hours, at least 2 of the following: bilateral or unilateral, pulsating, moderate to severe in intensity, aggravation by routine physical activity. During the headache, at least 1 of the following should be there. Migraine with aura, in addition to above criteria, at least 2 attacks fulfilling at least 3 of the above criteria should be there. 1 or more fully reversible aura symptoms have to be there, indicating focal, cortical, or brainstem dysfunction. So the aura indicates some kind of a brain or focal dysfunction. Aura developing gradually over 4 minutes, or 2 or more symptoms occurring in succession. So again, we said that if the aura is very much prolonged, lasting several hours, not more than 1 hour. So if it has to be under 1 hour, usually at least 4 minutes. If it is over 1 hour, then it's a red flag. Pain follows aura after less than an hour. So you might get aura and then within less than an hour. So if you get an aura in the morning and somebody gets a very severe headache in the evening, then that is a red flag. So we have to understand these red flags in our consulting rooms when we are assessing a patient of migraine or headache. And then once having diagnosed that the patient does not have a secondary headache, the patient has a primary headache, is it a migraine or what kind of a migraine it is, then we come to the treatment. So first thing is adequate patient and parent education is very, very important. You have to break the news to them that this is likely to be migraine. Migraine is likely to stay for a few years, may stay for a lifetime. You might have to adjust your doses. Luckily for us, pediatric migraine often will go away, unlike many adult migraines which may be more persistent. Avoiding unrealistic expectations from the parents, from you and from the treatment, and patient compiled headache diaries, if the parents can keep it, then it might be of help over a period of time to know what was the response, because we then tend to forget what happened over a period of time if you don't have the record. And the record is best kept by the parent, so we can get a very good snapshot of what's happening to the child and how it is affecting his activities and quality of life. So the aim of prophylactic treatment is to reduce attack frequency and the severity. And what has been used here are beta blockers. That is the first line management of prophylactic treatment of migraine. If the beta blockers are not effective, sometimes anti-seizure medications are used, calcium channel blockers are used, or maybe something like tricyclic antidepressants like nortriptyline, amitriptyline have been used. And the doses depend on the age of the child and the weight of the child. And some drugs are not used below certain ages, whereas most of these beta blockers, tricyclic antidepressants, calcium channel blockers have been used. Anti-seizure medications have been used in children and also in fairly young children. So they can be used in the suggested doses. Often this is just enough, along with lifestyle changes, to reduce the attack frequency and severity, and nothing more needs to be done. But if the child keeps on getting attacks, then during the attack, one might need an abortive treatment. And the abortive treatment may be specific abortive treatment like ergot derivatives or triptans. These are relatively inexpensive. The ergot is relatively inexpensive. Triptans may be expensive. Long duration of action, useful in long-lasting attacks with tendency to recurrent headaches. The ergots might have side effects, like ergotamine should not be taken within 6 hours of triptan. So don't mix ergot with triptans, and there should be at least a 24-hour gap, usually 1 or 2 days gap, so that you don't have side effects. The non-specific abortive treatments are analgesics or NSAIDs. We often use these first because sometimes as soon as the headache starts and it is mild, if you give very early on the analgesic, simple analgesic like acetaminophen, and there have been several studies which have shown level 1 evidence for all these treatments: ergot derivatives, triptans, analgesics, and NSAIDs. So it's best to use an analgesic like acetaminophen or paracetamol very early on, and that can abort the attack. If it doesn't, then you can move on to either triptans or NSAIDs. There are 2 approaches. One is a stratified care depending on the severity. That's what we said. Begin with acetaminophen and then go on. And then you can have step care, simple analgesic first, progress as needed to higher and higher medication to stop the attacks. So analgesic and non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs in migraine treatment may be aspirin, which we don't really suggest. There is a level of recommendation which is A level for all these, and ibuprofen, naproxen, diclofenac, paracetamol. All 4 of them one of them could be used in the appropriate doses. And these are adult doses, but we use pediatric doses like ibuprofen will be 40 mg per kg, acetaminophen will be about 50 mg per kg, and so on and so forth. Acetylsalicylic maybe 3 to 5 mg per kg. And these others are metamizole, phenazone, tolfenamic acid, and these combinations with caffeine are all showing a level of evidence B. So we tend to use the A level evidence, which are more efficacious. The abortive treatment, again, the entire aim of abortive treatment was stopping acute episodes quickly and effectively. Triptans, which is a class of selective and highly effective 5-HT1B, 1-beta, 1-delta receptor agonists, have practically replaced ergot derivatives, because ergots have side effects which can be quite severe. The triptans are very well sort of tolerated even in children, and now abortive treatment should also include a triptan along with either the previous medication that we chose, like NSAIDs or something like that. The triptans come in many doses and dosage forms. You can get oral triptans, you can get melt tablets, you can get nasal sprays, and in some countries you can even get suppositories. So what are the pharmacokinetic properties of available triptans? That one thing is that they can act very quickly. The onset of action is very quick, as we can see. You have sumatriptan, rizatriptan, zolmitriptan, almotriptan, elatriptan, naratriptan, and frovatriptan. Now, the naratriptan and fluotriptan are for long-lasting attacks. Rizatriptan is very rapidly acting. It starts, it has its full action within 30 minutes. And although its half-life is short, 2 to 5 hours, it's a very good dose to use along with beta blockers. So that what happens is beta blockers is preventive, and for acute attack, you can take rizatriptan. And sumatriptan also could be used. It also has a rapid onset attack, rapid onset of stopping acting, and it also can be used. These are available as nasal sprays, as you can see over here. Sumatriptan nasal spray, zolmitriptan nasal spray. Rizatriptan is a tablet, including a dispersible tablet. So triptans are always now included because they have a rapid and work like magic in most of the children. So this is a study which shows triptans for treatment of acute pediatric migraine, systematic literature review. And they have shown that this has got a good level of evidence. So advantages of triptans in randomized controlled trials are degree of pain relief is good. Pain freedom at 2 hours is almost complete. There's a sustained pain freedom defined as pain-free at 2 hours plus no use of rescue medication and no recurrence within 24 hours. And sustained pain freedom associated with no adverse effects. So triptans are a very good class of drugs to use for children for abortive treatment when the primary drugs have failed. So how does the migraine evolve, a pediatric migraine? So migraines may do one of three things. One is completely resolve and not return, which is the most happy situation for the child and the mother. He can get back to his life. There is no affection of his quality of life. It can remain the same in frequency and develop more classic symptoms as the child grows. So initially they were common migraine without aura. As the child grows, you start getting auras and typical auras, and then with visual involvement, and then you start getting nausea, vomitings, long-lasting headaches, and so on and so forth. And sometimes increase in frequency and intensity as the child ages. So all three kinds of the evolutions are known. So what one must remember is one must not mistreat migraine. One is not to misdiagnose a simple headache as migraine and start anti-migraine treatment. And therefore the criteria are very strict for diagnosing of migraine. So we must look at all those criteria and see if the child fits in that. You can keep a sort of a chart of all those criteria in your clinic. So whenever a child comes with migraine, you can just tick off whether it fits into that. And that all comes mostly from history. So in migraine, it is mostly the clinical history. There's a quick neurological examination which rules out the red flags, and only if required, you do an imaging. So most of it is history and talking to the parents and the patients. Now, mistreating migraine can do two things. A simple migraine can lead to a transformed migraine or chronic progressive headache, which may last for hours, years, months and years in the child, and then it's very difficult to control. And migraines can become daily and respond poorly to current migraine treatment. And then you tend to use more and more medications and more combinations, which lead to medication overuse headaches. Luckily, these overuse headaches are reversible, and when you stop those drugs that are causing this and reduce the drug load, the headaches go away, and it comes back to the primary headache type, which might have been just a simple common migraine, which was not so very frequent, and then it became more and more unresponsive as we started adding the medications. One must have an holistic approach, assessing how his or her lifestyle and behaviors are affected, like diet, sleep, exercise, avoidance of migraine triggering factors. And these are very, very important, not only in the younger child, but especially in the adolescents who may have very erratic lifestyles. They may consume alcohol, they may stay up at night, they may fast for several hours, either religiously or otherwise. They may have other substance abuses, which is becoming very common in larger cities now. Patients should also be encouraged to explore non-pharmacological approaches whose effectiveness in migraine prevention is well documented, such as biofeedback, relaxation therapy, CBTs, that is cognitive behavioral therapies, and yoga, and in general, varieties of exercises that can help with migraine. Now, there are two food-related compounds. One is magnesium and riboflavin that have been studied and presented in evidence-based guidelines for migraine headaches in the primary care setting. is a pharmacological management for prevention of migraine by the US Headache Consortium, American Academy of Family Physicians, American Academy of Neurology, and several of these academies. And this is the recommendation from them. Magnesium replacement has been studied in 2 trials of migraine prevention and in 1 trial of migraine associated with premenstrual syndrome. 2 of these 3 studies favored the use of magnesium over placebo, but the 3rd study failed to show any. So there is some evidence here in these studies that magnesium may help to prevent migraine. Riboflavin, which is vitamin B2 in the dose of 400 milligrams, was compared to placebo, and a significant benefit was observed 3 to 4 months following initiation of treatment. Therefore, there may be some children where we do not want to start them on therapies like flunarizine, which may give rise to weight gain, which may give rise to some drowsiness, or some of the other medication like anti-epileptic drugs like topiramate, which also gave rise to some cognitive difficulties. And when we want to avoid this, we may just try lifestyle management, magnesium, riboflavin, exercises, relaxation, and all those things. And maybe one can get away with all this in some of the mildest forms of migraines. And treated properly, migraine treated early can go away in many of the kids. Only some of them tend to be moderately severe or severe migraines. And we've just looked at how to manage these with the various medications that are there. So with this, I think I will stop, and maybe if you have any questions, I can stop sharing my slide if you like, or.
Yeah, we have a few questions.
Sure.
Yeah, Dr. Deepak Koti from Raipur. He asks, in children, what would be the drug of choice in first migraine attack?
In a first migraine attack, really, we may not start him on medication. We just need to assess him, as I said. That is it really a migraine attack, number one, or is it something else, that there are no red flags? If there is it's really a migraine attack, either it's a common migraine or a classical migraine. Most often, if it's a younger child, it may very well be a common migraine. Classical migraines are relatively less common in younger children. In older children and adolescents, you might get classical migraines with aura. So if there is a migraine attack, he has to be talked more about that. Yes, this is likely to be a migraine. Migraine is likely to come back again. Therefore, you need to look at your lifestyle. You should avoid certain food items that may cause migraine, such as nuts, coffee, chocolates. If it's an adolescent, then alcohol should be prevented. Sleep deprivation should be avoided, and fasting should be avoided. So that's all we do. And we probably give them a paracetamol and tell them, if you get a migraine again sometime, take this as soon as you get a headache, and then report back to us. Let's assess more.
Dr. Prakash Govai from Assam. Can you suggest a prophylactic treatment for children below 10 years?
So the best prophylactic treatment for children below 10 years is, again, one is lifestyle. As I said, that always comes in whatever kind of migraine you have, however severe it is. That's the best preventive for migraine. But besides that, propranolol may be the best drug of choice. That is always step one for most of the kids. And if it's a 10-year-old child, you can give 20 milligram BD twice a day, morning and evening, for about 3 to 6 months, and see what happens to the migraines if he's getting repeated attacks. Most often, their attacks stop, and after 3 or 6 months, we usually get rid of the propranolol, but still ask them to continue lifestyle management, and usually that's good. If it doesn't stop only with propranolol, then as a second step, we might add flunarizine, 5 milligrams at night to that, and then see what happens. And these are the 2 best combinations for prevention of mild or early migraines.
Dr. K. Raj Kapoor from Delhi. What are some natural options for a completely healthy patient with intermittent cranial vascular headaches?
Intermittent cranial vascular headaches have to be treated with intermittent therapy. I don't think they require very long therapy unless they are very frequent. Does that answer your question?
You want some natural options.
Natural options, again, are a lot of people, if it's a very trivial one, they apply balms and do all sorts of other things. These are natural options. Otherwise, for something that is very episodic and coming once in a while, there is nothing one needs to do on a long-term basis to prevent this.
Dr. Ramesh Sethia from Jaipur. How is the efficacy of sumatriptan in nitroglycerin-induced headache?
The best thing is to, if the nitroglycerin can be, nitroglycerin is usually a sort of, incident on use of nitroglycerin. I mean, there are very few people who would require to use nitroglycerin at that point of time continuously and keep on getting headaches. The best thing is to remove the nitroglycerin, use something else for which it was used. And of course, you
Dr.
can, for
Smita
any
Kher.
kind of acute headache, you can always use the triptan, they will help you.
Dr. Smita Kher from Mumbai. How is ANS dysfunction connected with migraine pathogenetically?
Autonomic nervous system.
Yes, ANS dysfunction.
Some people do get ANS, but whenever there's an ANS, one should think of basilar migraine, because the base of the brainstem and all the, basilar arterial system actually supplies the brain, and therefore you get all those symptoms which are related to ANS. So that's where the connection is. There's no classical migraine, you often will not get ANS symptoms.
Dr. Diptanshu Das from Kolkata. Is there any difference in experience with sumatriptan and the newer ones like rizatriptan?
Rizatriptan is being more used. Even zolmitriptan we have used in children more often, and we find that they are much more rapidly acting. Therefore, what happens is, and they are available as nasal sprays now. So something like 1.25 milligrams can be used nasally, intranasally, and you get a rapid response within maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
Dr. Rajendra from Patna. What is the role of vitamins like riboflavin in migraine?
We just discussed that there are studies which have shown benefit of riboflavin 400 milligrams given daily for 3 or 4 months, that there was significant benefit in prevention. So it's not for acute migraine, but may be useful for prevention. The level of evidence is not very high, but there are few studies which have shown this.
Dr. Smita Kher from Mumbai. What is the role of glutamate in migraine and its clinical significance?
Why would one use glutamate for migraine? I don't think anybody would use glutamate.
No, I guess she wants the pathogenic role of glutamate in migraine.
I am not very certain that glutamate is involved directly in migraine, although epilepsy and migraine have similar channelopathies, but there has been no study where you have glutamate blockers found to be useful in like NMDA antagonists and all useful in migraine. So I agree that there is a similar kind of pathophysiology like cortical spreading depression or excitation of some channels which leads to migraine, just like in epilepsy. But I'm not sure that there is anything to do with glutamate in this respect.
Dr. Smita Kher from Mumbai. What is the role of Botox in pediatric headache and migraine?
In adolescent and in adult patient, Botox has been used. Again, there the jury is out on how good Botox is. There are several studies which have shown the benefit of Botox, but I'm not sure there are any randomized control studies in children whereby Botox is used, so much in pediatric age group.
That was the last question. That was the last question. Thank you, Dr. Yardi, for the presentation.
Thank
and
you very
I
much.
hand over to Dr. Naik.
Yeah. So on behalf of Health and You, I wish to thank Dr. Nandan Yardi. Thank you very much for being our speaker on this webinar. What a wonderful presentation you gave on pediatric migraine, both acute and prophylactic measures, plus some other holistic measures to take care of migraine. So I am sure audience must have found it very, very interesting and enlightening. I would also like to thank Dr. Manjusha for coordinating this session. And thank you, doctors, for taking your valuable time out for this webinar. You are taking good care of Indians during this COVID-19 crisis. We wish to thank you for your efforts, and we request you to support Health and You products. On behalf of Health and You, I would like to once again thank Dr. Yardi and Dr. Manjusha for being with us and giving this wonderful session. So signing off on behalf of Health and You, here is Deepak Naik. Thank you very much. Have a good day to you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Dr.
so much.
Thank you, Dr. Manjusha, and all the delegates who are on this
Yeah.
webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.